Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine in Cleveland, Ohio. This is All Access Med School Admissions. Hello again, everybody. My name is Christian Essman. I'm your host, and today I have a special episode for you, special in my opinion, because we're going to be talking about our medical school here at Case Western, and I have a great guest. She's my boss and the Dean of Admissions here, which I'll tell you about her in just a minute. But I want to thank any new listeners that are tuning in today. If you haven't listened to this show before, I encourage you to go back and listen to some previous episodes, as I think you'll find them informative and entertaining, hopefully, and you'll probably get a ton of information and tips and advice along the way. If you're a returning listener, thanks so much for coming back. Keep those questions coming. You can send those questions to me at allaccess@case.edu. I love getting listener questions, and again, if you've heard this before, I build them into the show. Maybe this show is a little bit like the Netflix show Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, where Jerry Seinfeld interviews his comedic friends, but maybe you won't laugh as much at this show as you might on the on Jerry Seinfeld's show, but it's kind of like that. I'm interviewing my friends at other medical schools to take you inside their medical school and, more importantly, inside their admissions office and their process. So that's the goal here. So like I said a minute ago, today we're talking about my medical school at Case Western Reserve. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are, and then I'm going to tell you about my guest today, Dr. Mehta, and then we're just going to jump right into our conversation. So Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine is located in the birthplace of rock and roll here in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland is located along the tropical shores of Lake Erie, which is one of the 5 Great Lakes in the upper Midwest of the United States. The medical school was originally part of Western Reserve University and was established in 1843, but later merged with Case Institute of Technology in 1967 to become what is now Case Western Reserve University. So there's a little history lesson for you there. We have 3 distinct pathways to an MD degree at our school, which Dr. Mehta and I will get into a little bit during our conversation, but we have what's called the University Program, the Cleveland Clinic Learner College of Medicine of Case Western Reserve University, and the Medical Scientist Training Program. CWRU is the largest biomedical institution in the state of Ohio and one of the largest research institutions in the country. The medical school is proudly partnered with 4 of the best teaching hospitals in the region and the nation: Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health Medical Center, the Lewis Stokes Cleveland VA Medical Center, and university hospitals. Each of these institutions serves as an extension of our medical research and education by preparing the leading physicians and medical professionals of the future. The medical school is dedicated to enhancing human health and is known as a leader and innovator in the fields of medical education and biomedical research. Building upon our proud history while embracing today's challenges, the school's mission remains unchanged, which is to educate future physicians who will care for patients with competence, creativity, and compassion in a setting that fosters collegiality, leadership, and excellence in scholarship and research. Case Western is a private institution and accepts applicants from Canada, international students, and applicants who have the DACA status. Now, one exception would be to that statement is that our Cleveland Clinic Learner Program does not accept applicants with the DACA status. Additionally, there is no state residency requirement. In 2018, we received 6,645 applications, and that actually jumped up to 7,500 in 2019. And in 2018, we interviewed 1,427 applicants for a class of 216, and that encompasses across all 3 programs. 52% of the entering class of 2018 were comprised of women, and 24% self-identified as underrepresented in medicine. Based on AMCAS matriculant data for 2018, 80% of incoming students had community service or volunteer experiences, 90% had physician shadowing or clinical observation experiences, 88% had medical or clinical community service or volunteering experiences, 41% had some type of paid medical or clinical employment, and 97% had research or lab experience. The mean undergraduate GPA for students accepted to our medical school in 2018 was 3.79, with a range of 2.91 to 4.0. And the mean MCAT for accepted students was a 517, with a range of 502 to 527. Now, today we're going to be talking and hearing from our Dean of Admissions, Dr. Mehta. So let me give you a little background on her. Dr. Lena Mehta is the Associate Dean for Admissions at our medical school here at Case Western, and is also an Associate Professor of Radiology at University Hospital's Cleveland Medical Center. I refer to her as the Queen Dean. She has held many different roles in the School of Medicine, including service for several years as the Interim Vice Dean for Medical Education team at the School of Medicine, and serving on the steering committee for our recent reaccreditation process. Dr. Mehta is currently a member of the National Committee on Admissions, called COA, which is a 5-member advisory group that provides guidance on national admissions policies and procedures to the AAMC. And she also co-chairs the National Ad Hoc Group on Admissions, which is an advisory group to the AAMC. If you don't know what the AAMC is, go back to episode 1 and we'll give you all the definitions of these abbreviations. As a board-certified radiologist, Dr. Mehta maintains an active clinical practice with a specialty in nuclear radiology. She has served as the chairperson for radiology risk management and quality at University Hospitals of Cleveland, and has been a member of the Radiology Board of Directors. She has also been a member of the department's Residency Education and Residency Selection Committees and a Committee on Appointments and Tenure. She currently serves on the Quality and Compensation Committees and is a steering committee member of the Women in Radiology group at her institution. Let me tell you, Dr. Mehta is passionate about mentorship. She is the faculty advisor for the AMWA chapter at Case Western and currently co-chairs the National Mentorship Committee for the American Women's Association, otherwise known as AMWA. She was the recipient of the National Exceptional Mentor Award for AMWA in 2018 and also the Gender Equity Award, the latter which was presented at our graduating class by our graduating class in 2018. Her interests also include leadership and coaching, and she serves as the co-director for the FLEX program, which is a leadership development program for women faculty at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. Dr. Mehta is my good friend and a colleague, and I couldn't be more thrilled to bring this interview to you. So, you know what? Let's get after it. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
I finally have you here on the show. Welcome, Dr. Mehta.
Thank you, Mr. Essman. It's great to be here.
Well, we've waited this long to feature ourselves. So
good things come to those who wait, right?
That's right. So let's just dive right into it with you. We've been friends now for a long time. What, 13, 14 years?
Double digits for sure.
Yeah. Let's tell everybody how you got this job.
I got this job in a rather unorthodox way, which doesn't happen much anymore. So don't get any ideas, people listening at home. I was very new in my clinical practice. I was only about 5 years in. And I knew that in addition to my clinical practice of diagnostic radiology / clinical nuclear medicine, I'd get involved in other arenas. And sure enough, at year 3 in my practice, I became a member of the board of directors of my radiology group, which is a private group at that time. Year 4, I became the first ever director of risk management and quality control for the Department of Radiology. And then year 5, I met the then dean of the medical school, Ralph Horowitz, in the course of a meeting, and we got to chatting a little bit. And then a couple days later, I got a phone call asking me if I wanted to be the dean of admissions. And Ashton Kutcher hadn't come around then, but had he, I would have thought I was being punked because this was so not on my radar. I went to a 6-year BSMD program, so I didn't even apply to med school in the traditional sense. So after I recovered I regained my footing, I started to think about it, and I talked to a bunch of career mentors and people who had career trajectories that I wanted to emulate, and they all said, don't do it. It's academic suicide. You're so young in your career. I was starting to make a name for myself in my clinical practice of nuclear medicine, and I turned it down. And then They gave it to somebody else, and she wanted an assistant dean for admissions. So she called me and asked me if I wanted to be the assistant dean of admissions. I'm like, yeah, sure, totally, I can do that. So I took it. And then she wound up leaving 2 years later, and then I became the dean of admissions. So again, that is not typical. Now there's application processes and interview processes. That was sort of an anecdotal one-off, but that's how I got there.
I remember when I was applying for this job, I came and knocked on your door.
I was my assistant dean, little rabbit hole.
And I feel like such a doofus. Hey, my name's Christian, and I applied for this job. And you were like,
I was impressed. You gave me a portfolio and everything.
And I was like, and you're like, okay, thanks. Like, okay, bye.
Okay, thanks, bye.
You ran down the hallway and thought I'd never get a phone call.
Well, it's like interviewing applicants to med school. You can't really show interest because other people have to weigh in.
Yeah. So I do. I remember that very vividly.
I remember that too. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. So what do you like? What do you enjoy about this? We do this every day. We have a blast.
But
What do you like?
No day's ever the same.
Right. Yeah.
No one applicant is ever the same. It's just a joy to meet such a diverse group of people who are so committed and passionate and going into medicine for the right reasons. We take it very seriously. We do feel and understand the responsibility we have, that we are helping to shape the face of medicine. But there's just no one day that's the same. It's just meeting all these great, amazing, cool applicants who are energetic and excited. It just, from a really selfish perspective, it is impossible to be jaded, I feel, if you work with medical students, because that youthful exuberance and idealism is everything, and it keeps me grounded every single day. So I love the process, and I, again, selfishly love what it does for me.
Mm-hmm. What about, so I mentioned in your bio sketch that you've been doing a lot of work more in the last several years on the national level. So how did you begin to get involved at the national level? I mean, between us, like we were both like, why didn't we do this earlier?
Yeah, we came to it kind of late, I have to say. It was just a matter of going to sort of working my way up there, started going to regional meetings and making my voice heard and running for regional positions and getting them, and slowly networking and getting to know people then at the national level as well. Networking really had a lot to do with it. Intentionality. I think we were pretty intentional about understanding that we wanted to try and make a larger footprint than the one we did on a daily basis. So one thing that I would say to people who are listening is don't afraid to be intentional about what you want. There's no shame in your game if you have a target in mind, or you want to accomplish something and you do what you need to do to get there.
I also wanted to touch on too, before we get into the curricular things, but to keep talking about your background a little bit, you have some other interests which have been more recent, but in the coaching and the mentoring and really involved at the medical school level of mentoring our students. So why did you feel that was important to start adding that to your portfolio?
As I look back on my career, I did a faculty development program here at the School of Medicine. I participated in it called the Flex program, and that was unbelievably eye-opening for me. And it made me realize again the word intentionality, how intentional we can be about our own personal growth, and how intentional we can be in seeking out our mentors, and how intentional we can be in seeking out people who are going to help make us better. And if only I'd had that program much earlier in my career, I would have pissed fewer people off, I'm sure. But I mean, it was really formative for me, and it got me thinking about what a paucity of resources there is for people to help them sort of get their sea legs earlier and figure out who they are and how to maybe mitigate conflict or navigate it more adroitly. So that's what really got me thinking. And so, yeah, since then, I've been doing a lot of mentoring and coaching. I'm the faculty advisor here at the School of Medicine for the American Medical Women's Association chapter. I've been on the national board of AMWA, and I'm currently the co-chair of the AMWA National Mentorship Committee. I do a lot of work with women, but I also do a lot of work with men as well. And I like it so much that I'm working on getting my certificate, my executive coaching certificate. And I just retained my first client. So a lot of interesting stuff is happening there. But really, there's so much in medicine. There's so many things you have to understand and learn and navigate. If I can just help smooth the path a little bit for people, that would be everything for me.
How do you balance all this? I see how you do it, but tell them, because you're in our office about 40% of my time, and then this other 60% is over at the hospital.
Yeah, in my clinical practice.
And you have a family.
I have a family. My husband's a surgeon. He's lovely, but he's not at home as much as we would like.
And you have a daughter. I mean, how do you...
We have 2 cats too.
Yeah.
A Maine Coon and a Siamese. They're adorable. How do I balance it? I'm very organized. I do prioritize things. I have to say that I have learned to say no.
You've learned to say no. I've seen that.
I've learned to say no. There's a time in your career where you don't really have the latitude, or you really maybe shouldn't say no. You should try everything. But now I've honed down to my areas of interest. I don't say no. My sort of response is, I don't think that I could do a thorough job for you, so I'm going to give that opportunity to somebody else. It's not saying no, it's understanding what you're capable of doing. So many times I see colleagues who are so overextended, they're dropping balls left and right and letting people down, and I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So I really contextualize it. I don't want to let you down. I just can't take that on at this moment. So I'm really organized. I have a great team.
Yeah, you do.
I do. My senior associate director of admissions is exemplary, I have to say. It's just prioritizing. And I'm not going to say that I don't get a little nuts every now and then. I do feel a smidge overwhelmed here and there, but I can handle it pretty well at this juncture.
What do you like to do for fun? I know what you like to do for fun, but what do you like to do for fun?
I like to work out a lot. There's a YouTube channel that I follow where I work sometimes it's a family affair. My husband and my daughter and I will be working out in our workout room in our basement with Sydney Cummings, personal trainer to the stars on YouTube. It's a free channel. Why'd I just give her a plug? I don't know. I'm a huge fan of her. She's amazing. Yeah. So we love to work out and exercise. I really feel that physical fitness and mental fitness, the mind-body connection, are very closely intertwined. We have a very robust social calendar. I have a very robust and phenomenal group of friends around me. I like to cook. We love to travel. Love to travel. I've started dabbling in golf because our daughter's going to leave for college in 2 years, and my husband likes to golf, so I figure we should have some stuff we can do together. So I do a variety of different things.
Guilty pleasures.
Guilty pleasures. I enjoy fried salted potatoes very much. Potato chips and French fries are kind of my...
There's a bag right in front of her right now.
I keep looking at it longingly, but I think it'll be too noisy on the podcast.
I can edit that out.
I read voraciously. I don't watch any television, which is not noble at all, because what do I read? I read British chick lit. Yes, I do. I read books that have red shoes on the back cover. Yes, I read British chick lit. That's one of my guilty pleasures.
Favorite music? 80s
it's going to have to be 80s alternative.
80s
yeah,
alternative.
Christian, you nailed it. Erasure, The Cure, New Order. Yeah. Yes, that's it. You got it.
Dr. Mehta and I share something in common, that we both had the same length of hair in high school.
We both rocked mullets in the 80s.
We both found pictures of ourselves from the 80s in high school.
Well, Christian showed me his. I'm like, I can't laugh at you. And then I showed him mine, and he laughed at me.
We had the same length of hair.
We did.
Oh my gosh. All right. So I wanted people to get to know you a little bit because you're so much fun.
Oh,
we
thanks,
have a
Christian.
good time together.
We have a really good time.
Now, I think people have been waiting to hear about our school. I've been getting emails from listeners saying, okay, I've been hearing about these other schools, but we want to hear from Case. So today's the day.
All right, here we are.
So let's start with the curricular highlights. Then we'll talk about the application process and interview day things. What's the big highlight that you would start with about our school?
The big highlight that I would start with about our school is a brand new state of the future health education campus that we just moved into about 2 months ago. Construction is done with some, post-construction modifications that always happen with something new. It's an unbelievable building. If any of our listeners were ever in our old med school building, it kind of looked like it was lovely and warm, but it kind of looked like a high school from 1953.
It was a little dated.
It was a little dated. Yeah. I mean, it was retro and had its own antique charm, but our new building is a magnificent edifice, glass, steel, natural light. It's just remarkably beautiful. But aesthetics aside, it also serves its form and function. It's called the Health Education Campus because we have not only all three programs of Case Western Reserve School of Medicine housed in this building for the first time, but we also have the nursing school, the dental school, and our physician assistant program all housed in here together. And we are potentially in the process of putting together a doctorate in physical therapy program here as well. And then we have our MS and anesthesiology program housed here as well. So really a remarkable environment for interprofessional education and collaboration, not to mention just getting to know a whole cohort of people that you may not otherwise get to have met. And not only that, it also we'll talk about this in a moment, I think it is really going to support some of the incredible innovations that we have implemented and will be implementing in our medical education processes.
It is really amazing when you walk in the morning, because when you walk into the building, you enter into this enormous atrium. Courtyard. Yeah. And there's tons of seating in there. A couple students described it as like an Apple store, but for med schools, because that's the kind of construction.
There are full-size trees in there.
And there's a
photosynthesis,
skylight,
oxygenation.
Yeah, above. And so it's just really, it's cool at lunchtime to see all these students, nursing students, PA students, dental students, med students.
It's got a great energy.
Lunch.
There's a lot of bustle here.
Yeah, I love it when they come out. And so now we eat out there, because we used to eat at our desks.
Not to mention the building lends itself to walking, so we've been getting more steps in.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to emphasize that our medical school doesn't have just one program for an MD. We actually have 3. And I think that's something people kind of aren't aware of about CASE, is that we have a traditional 4-year program called the university program. Mm-hmm. And then the Cleveland Clinic Learner College of Medicine, which is a 5-year MD, which we're going to get them on the show someday. And then our medical scientist training program. So there are actually 3 programs within the School of Medicine.
Under the umbrella of Case Western Reserve School of Medicine, yeah.
So we'll talk about in a little bit how that application process works, but I think it's worth noting now that we have more than one track to get an MD at Case. So to talk about some of the curricular structure, just to give some highlights about, let's start with the first 2 years. And
so we're going to be talking about the university program.
Yeah, so this is the curriculum for the university program.
Which is our largest program.
Yeah, it's 170 students plus the MSTP, which is about 12 to 14 students per program.
And our MSTP students go through the university program curriculum.
Yeah. So altogether in the first 2 years, the MSTP students are with the university program students. And so the curriculum is called the Western Reserve II curriculum. There was a Western Reserve I, and that was retired, back in 2006.
But was an innovator, really a groundbreaking innovator of its time.
Mm-hmm. So the first 2 years are broken down into these themed blocks. Every block has a name or a theme, and then within each theme block are interrelated subjects that are grouped together and taught together over the course of anywhere from 11 to 14 weeks. So, for example, I always use block 4 is called homeostasis as the cardiovascular system, pulmonary system, renal system, cell regulation, pharmacology, and cell physiology. But within each block, the typical weekly schedule is students are in class about 24 hours a week. And the big highlight about the first 2 years is on paper, it looks like 50% lecture, 50% small group learning. But the main vehicle for education here, wouldn't you say, is a small group team?
That's the crown jewel of our learning.
Yeah, it's called IQ, or inquiry-based learning. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the crown jewel. So the students are broken down into teams in each block, about 9 to 10 students per team, IQ team. And there's usually a theme for the week. So the cases relate to the theme of the week and the lectures relate to the theme of the week. So this week's theme could be diabetes. And so on Monday, the teams get 2 patient cases usually about something related to diabetes for that week. And then the lectures that occur afterwards kind of frame the bigger picture topics in physiology and biochemistry and all those things about diabetics and diabetes. So they get 2 patient cases every Monday and they work on them throughout the week. And the inquiry-based part, that's a teaching philosophy, is where you give students the opportunity to work through something, ask questions, do research, do discovery, and come back and present on it. So that's how it works here. And so there's a facilitator in every group that's there as kind of a guide. They have essentially a teacher's manual, help to walk the students through the cases if necessary. But I think, truth be told, the students are really running the show.
Yeah, the facilitator is not there to feed information, but to direct the conversation and the learning process.
Yeah, so they kind of shepherd the students throughout the week if necessary, but the students are really driving the education that's going on with the facilitator there as a backup. And then so they work on these cases throughout the week. And then on Friday, they reconcile the official learning objectives. So students come up, work on their questions, and at the end of the week, the school releases what the official learning objectives were. And with the proper guidance from the facilitator, they should have knocked all these out. Mm-hmm. So that's really helping our students learn how to think like physicians in the first 2 years. I
completely agree.
From a physician's perspective, why is that important, this type of learning?
It's important on many levels. Not only does it get you to think in a problem-solving manner, which is something that we do virtually every minute of every clinical day that we have. And I'll give you an example of a case. on Monday morning, first they have check-in, right? They sit together. There's a social piece to this as well. Yeah. Collaboration and teamwork are the name of our game. So they sit down together. They have IQ. They talk about what they did over the weekend, anything important we need to know. How are you? How are you? I'm good. I did this. This was fun. And then you're given a case. And a case may be, 50-year-old marathon runner who's thirsty all the time, goes to the restroom, voids, urinates frequently, and has a little ulcer on her toe that's not healing. So the students are given the physical diagnosis findings that maybe a primary care physician would elicit, some basic blood work, and some other facets to the case. And they work through this and digest it and talk about what they understand, what they don't understand, where they think they need to do the research, start generating their learning objectives. So they start to think like doctors very early on, stepping back, looking at the details of the case, then looking at the bigger picture of it all and pulling it together. So and our students also learn how to be self-driven learners. They know where to go to look things up. It would be incredibly foolish to think that we can memorize everything that we need to know in medicine. With the information explosion that's occurred in the last decade and the rapidity of information change, we know that what we teach our students may very well be obsolete when they graduate, but what they can do is activate and locate the new information. And I've seen this in my clinical practice. I have some case med grads who are my residents, and invariably I know I'm going to sit down with them on their first month of the rotation. I'll say, this is a 3-phase bone scan. Do you know what that is? Yes, I do. I looked it up. And they'll teach it back to me, everything I was just going to tell them, giving me the opportunity to fill in the blanks with a more sophisticated level of learning than if I had to sit down and just churn through the nuts and bolts of it. So it's a really incredible way to stay ahead of this incredible information explosion that we have. Not only, though, does IQ help us teach the basic science in the clinical context, which makes it really interesting. The light burns ever more brightly at the end of our med students' tunnels because they're here facing clinical medicine in the first year of medical school. They start to think in this way, but also gives us the opportunity to introduce other topics that are equally or sometimes even more important than the basic science of disease. Maybe this woman turned 19 and lost her Medicaid, or she turned 27 and can no longer be on her parents' health insurance. And that's why she has uncontrolled diabetes, because she can't access her insulin, which has skyrocketed in price 200% in the past 3 years. So we talk about the basic science in the clinical context, but you also have the ability, and we do introduce the other equally important areas such as the socioeconomic determinants of health, some basic public health tenets. We talk about healthcare reform. We talk about access to care. We talk about cultural competency. We talk about medical anthropology. We incorporate so many of these areas into the curriculum starting in the first year that by the time the students hit the wards, they're thinking in a much more sophisticated way and they're able to look at their patients much more holistically.
There is an evidence-based portion of IQ as well.
Which is really cool.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to point out that when they get these cases, they're not just set adrift. They are given some resources, text chapters, journal articles that are
There's a lot of framework around it.
So it's not just like, here's a case and go Google and wiki things to find.
We discourage Google and wiki.
Yeah. So they're given some leading, but it's just they're not again set adrift. So from your perspective, you mentioned a minute ago that you have case grads on your service in nuclear med. What do you think? How do you see our students differently? Because you interview for residencies too.
I do.
And how do you differentiate? What do you see differently in our students compared to other grads?
Well, certainly the self-directed learning part are huge. Truly, they will, first day, first rotation, they'll pull up a scan, they'll see what the scan is, they'll truly go and access the information and read about the basics of it, which I don't see happen as often as I would like, I have to say. Our students are very adept at elucidating what the question is and figuring out where to get the answers to it. They also think much more holistically. They really do take into consideration the patient-based aspects of what we're seeing, not looking at it just from the physician perspective, but looking at it potentially from the patient perspective as well. And I do interview for our residency program, and I do see, with the way our curriculum structured, Christian mentioned our students are in class about 24 hours a week. The rest of the time is not free time. It's independent learning time. Certainly they have to be self-directed learners. They're doing the research that they need for IQ. They're shoring up their knowledge base for whatever they need to learn. But we also feel very strongly that our students should not only become talented professionals and talented scholars and academics, but they should also continue to evolve as human beings when they're in medical school. So our students get involved with so many things outside of the classroom, and that well-roundedness really shines through during the interview process where they've gotten involved. One of the reasons we want pre-meds to get involved outside the classroom is because we know you'll put more tools in your personal box, leadership, professionalism, broader worldview, you name it. And so I see our students continue to iterate and grow in this arena, which is really powerful for future physicians and future humans as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this with some other schools that we want well-rounded students. And we see that if you have a track record of being involved as a college student, you're likely going to bring those traits and that track record to be involved here.
Absolutely. And
maybe at a different level.
In a different way, without a doubt. School comes first. We don't ever want anyone to overextend, but the vast majority of students are able to stay well-balanced. And I really do think that it helps to mitigate burnout when you still live your life, when you have a life going on, clicking alongside your professional requirements, because you can't separate the two.
I'm often amazed when we talk to students, like all the things they're involved in.
Oh my goodness, I know.
And it's just like, but they're having fun.
They're having fun.
Yeah, they're not burned out, but they're working hard though too.
Oh yeah.
Because they have to be, you can't hide in small group. You have to be prepared every day.
Accountability.
Yeah.
And that's another huge thing that I love about the small group. When you're on a clinical service, you can't hide. It's all hands on deck, all brains ticking away. So small group does not permit students to hide. Some of our applicants may come from undergrad institutions where maybe you had 500 people in one of your prereq classes and nobody really knew what you knew or didn't know, and you didn't have to speak up. Here in IQ, intellectual honesty is always bared. It's always there.
You had mentioned at the beginning of IQ, the students do what's called check-in, where they just kind of go around the table and maybe get some of the chit-chat out of the way, but just kind of check in with everybody to see how you're doing. And then they do check out at the end, which is an opportunity to give feedback to one another, to say things like, I've heard students say things like, I know I got to go roll up my sleeves tonight because I haven't seen biochem in a long time. So I have to, but I tell you what, Brianna was really helpful up at the board because I know she was has a master's in biochemistry and I learned a ton from you. Or like, and today I know, Todd, you were really excited about this case, but you kind of overtalked some people. And, Todd's like, but I love diabetes. I don't know, but you have to, so they give feedback to each other, which
it's everything. So the team
doing it tactfully can be difficult.
It can be very difficult. It can be difficult to give it, and it can be difficult to receive it. And a lot of times when medical errors occur in the practice of medicine, it's because there was a breakdown of the team. There was a breakdown in communication. An ego got in the way. Somebody wasn't really able to identify where they needed to ask for help. Somebody was overconfident about something. So the team somehow fell apart frequently when we see these issues occur. And so IQ is a great starting place for our students to start to understand that concept. The ego, you got to check your ego in medicine. Physicians clear in popular fiction and pop culture today are we're always parodied as having these humongous egos, and reality check, you got to check your ego, because if you don't, something bad's going to happen. So we need to understand where we fit in and when we need to ask for help. Yeah.
So I think it's worth mentioning, just to kind of wrap up the first 2 year highlight. It's pass fail here the first 2 years, and people always ask us like, what are the assessments like? What are the exams like? And we do essay based examinations, and it's pass fail the first 2 years.
And if 100% of the class meets expectations, yay!
We rock.
So there's no hidden pass fail. There's no high pass, middle pass, low pass. That's truly pass fail. And I just want to qualify why we do that, because collaboration, again, is everything. And so many people come from undergrad where they're used to having to be alpha dog and climb on each other, top of each other to get that, those coveted A's in the class that's on a strict bell curve. Whereas here we want to check that and have everybody help each other be successful.
We're all in this together now.
Yep, absolutely.
We're all in this together now. So the other thing I want to talk about is the clinical years a little bit. I'd say our third and fourth year, pretty typical compared to other medical schools doing rotations in the hospitals. But one thing I think is unique that we wanted to talk about were our hospital partners.
Oh, yeah. We have not one, not two, not three, but we have 4 large hospital partners where all of our students get to rotate and spend time in no certain order. We have Cleveland Clinic Foundation, which for those of you who are purveyors of U.S. News and World Report, I know you've heard of it. We have University Hospitals of Cleveland, where I spend my clinical time. We have the Lewis Stokes VA, which is one of the VA centers of excellence nationally.
The third largest VA in the country.
Third largest VA in the country. And then we have Metro Health Medical Center, which is our county hospital, public safety net, has patients who are uninsured, underinsured, and insured, with a lot of very interesting ancillary services, level 1 trauma center, and that sort of thing. So it's very unique for a medical school to have affiliations with 4 discrete large hospital systems. Really, it's an all-access pass to whatever you potentially may see in medicine. And for our students, it means you're not climbing all over each other to get clinical experiences. You're not climbing all over each other to try and find a physician to spend some time with. You're not climbing all over each other to try and find some clinical research projects. The world truly is the oyster for our students.
I mean, I can't emphasize enough how large these facilities are. I mean, it is, well, it's an economic driver in the city of Cleveland, all these hospitals. Yeah. They employ, I mean, Cleveland Clinic is the largest employer in the state of Ohio now. And so just to give some perspective as to how big these places are, and in the diversity of patients our students see. They see patients that are from the underserved communities. They see patients that come in from other parts of the country to have
other
their
parts
care
of the
here.
world.
Yeah, here in Cleveland. So, so from your perspective, as a clinician, how does that benefit a student?
Just the depth and breadth of exposures that our students could potentially see is really staggering. Each hospital, I mean, of course, we all take care of patients, but each hospital sort of has its own theme, really. And having access to a VA is huge.
Why is that?
The vast majority of trainees will spend time in a VA, and it's a very interesting exposure to a single payer system that's located here within the United States. And our VA is really exemplary in terms of its outcomes. The VA is not allowed to brag about its accomplishments. So we do read headlines sometimes about how things could be better, but what they're not allowed to do is counter that with the incredible level of care that they provide to potentially a very, very, very medically at-risk community, ill patients, older patients. So it's really remarkable, remarkable.
I think any perspective that, because your husband works at the VA.
My husband's a vascular surgeon at the VA.
What has he said based on what he's seen over there?
He loves the vets. He likes the single payer system. He likes if he has a patient that he feels is not ready for discharge, there's not an insurance company breathing down his neck and saying, too bad, so sad, you got to get rid of that patient because their benefits are expiring at midnight. So he feels like he really has the ability to take care of the patients in the way in which he needs to without having, again, that third party payer dictating care. He's also Canadian, so he likes a single payer system.
What else about the third and fourth year? Like anything else about the hospitals?
Really, again, I'm a broken record here. The depth and breadth of exposures is amazing. Not to mention that our students frequently have more autonomy on clinical rotations because the residents have an ample number of patients themselves. So our medical students frequently can roll up their sleeves and dive in and actually be a member of the care team, not be somebody who's simply shadowing on a clinical rotation.
Right, that's important.
So it's very important that they're part of that care team. Again, with all the resources we have, that so the opportunities are just so rich.
Something else that happens in the third year is that we have dedicated time for a research thesis.
Yes.
And we have carved out approximately 16 weeks for a thesis project. So every medical student here at Case has to do research. The university program has this research thesis called the MD Thesis Project, and then the Cleveland Clinic has their own research component that takes about a year, and then the MSTP obviously has
the
4 years
of
PhD.
Yeah.
So every medical student at Case has to do research. One thing I think when we go out and talk to pre-meds is that I think there's a misconception about our medical school that you have to have research to be admitted here.
Yes.
What would you say to that?
It depends on the program that we're talking about. For the university program, research is not a prerequisite, but applicants should know that we have a 4-month research block. And if they hate research, well, I don't know if they should be going into medicine, but this isn't the school for them. But I also then want to contextualize that and say we define research very, very broadly. For a lot of undergrads, research is basic science. It's wet lab, it's sequencing DNA, it's Western blots, it's Drosophila, zebrafish, because that's what's available on undergrad campuses. But when our students get here, they understand the definition of medical research is so incredibly broad. You could do basic science research. You can do clinical research, translational. You can do retrospective patient reviews. We've had students do research on our curriculum and its outcomes. Very, very, very broadly based. So the majority of students who apply to us do have some research experiences and they like it. And that's why they apply to us, because they want to continue doing it. But if a student applies to us who doesn't have research and they've done other things, that's fine. No worries. But just make sure that they're willing to come here and do it for that 4 month. So the university program is more for the undifferentiated student. We don't have a preconceived idea of what our graduates should be doing. The Cleveland Clinic Learner College of Medicine defined outcome goal, physician investigators at the end of medical school and beyond. MSDP, obviously, MD, PhD, ideal career outcome is majority laboratory, and then patient care piggybacked on that. So for the university program, research is there to make you more well-rounded. It's there to expose you to research, what research means in medicine if you've never seen that. How do you know you don't want an academic career if you've never been exposed to it? Every physician needs to understand and interpret and decide how to apply the scientific literature. And what better way to do that than to have engaged with it yourself? Right. So for many levels, and then if we want to be really grossly pragmatic, what do residency programs look for in this day and age? I hate to say it, they look for step 1 scores. How many honors did you get in your clerkships? And was there evidence of intellectual inquiry, i.e. research? So even from a pragmatic perspective, it's a beautiful thing to have. And our students can be really productive.
Yeah.
We had 72% of 70 students
the dean
last
said
year.
this morning that 70 students last year had published research from the graduating class.
Huge.
So I mean, why that is huge is because it really we've carved out 4 months in the curriculum to do research. I think some students are doing longitudinal because you can start doing research in your first 2 years.
Yeah, with the way the curriculum is structured, you can definitely start earlier on. And then a large number of students will do research in the summer between first and second year. Yep. And then we have a large percentage who'll wind up taking a fifth year because they love it so much that they want to continue on with it.
And it's a mentored thesis too. So again, you're not set adrift and expected to go and figure this out on your own, to identify a mentor in that field, to be there as kind of a guide. And they call it a thesis, but they don't have to defend this in front of people. It's, you and I call it a diet thesis, or
thesis light.
Thesis light. But it's but they can do it here in Cleveland. They can do it outside of Cleveland. But I think most of the students are doing it because there's so much
opportunity here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to talk about, highlights about the school, and this kind of goes back to the new building, is we changed our anatomy curriculum last year because of our move into the new building. And Case partnered with Microsoft a couple years ago in anticipation of this move to partner with them to develop the first third-party app for their HoloLens technology. And so now we have developed HoloAnatomy. And you worked with the developer, Mark Griswold. You know him a little bit.
I do.
So you were a little skeptical. So basically, when you put on goggles, virtual reality goggles or mixed reality goggles, and the students will be doing anatomy through that. Now we didn't get rid of cadaveric dissection. We still keep cadaveric dissection, but it's complemented.
2-week boot camp of cadaveric dissection.
So now it's complemented with HoloAnatomy. And I know at first you were, as a radiologist,
where anatomy is totally my thing.
You were a little skeptical until we did the demo.
I was skeptical. I went to a medical school a million years ago where it was all anatomy all the time. My anatomy knowledge was amazing, and it still is because I'm a radiologist at the risk of sounding immodest. So yeah, I was skeptical. I said, they have to dissect. How can they not dissect? It's a rite of passage, blah, 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 blah. And then I did a HoloLens demo, and my reality exploded. It was really remarkable. And a lot of times with gross dissection, even though it's quote unquote a 3D, you can't get behind certain anatomic structures in a cadaver. They don't necessarily look as they look in life when you're actually in the operating room. A lot of memorization was involved with it. And with the HoloAnatomy, there's a lot more you can understand. You can go behind and above and rotate things and understand the anatomical relationships so much more readily than you can in a cadaver. It was really mind-blowing for me, I have to say.
Yeah, so the students they've had pilots for the last 3 years with groups of students to get this as they were going on the development. And now just upstairs from us here, they have the digital anatomy suites. So I'm excited to see them get in there and start using it.
We did pilot studies and found a higher efficiency for studying for exams with the HoloAnatomy than with cadavers. And there's certain parts of the anatomy that just take a long time. The pelvis is exhibit A to dissect with little anatomic yield in the end. So
that's a good point.
Our data our control studies found much higher efficiencies in studying.
Yeah, I just know that just talking with the students in the hallway or something and see them coming out of the rooms after doing hollow anatomy session, I'm like, what do you like about that? And like Trenton was like, oh my gosh, I learned so much in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I learned it's so efficient because you see and learn so much just in an hour or 2 hours than I would when I'm in the lab, because you take so much time to go back and looking at the book or looking at the image and then trying to find it in your cadaver. Maybe it's there, maybe it's abnormal, and not the way it should look in the book.
Right.
So it can be frustrating.
Not to mention the O'Day Anatomy cologne is no longer a thing.
It's a little strong.
We used to get in the elevators and you could tell when it was anatomy day because it would kind of hit you in the face.
It'd come down the hallway in our old office. Something else that CASE has been implementing over the last few years is interprofessional education. Mm-hmm. Again, in anticipation of moving into this building where now it's a academic home to a lot of different disciplines, they've been building this interprofessional center of excellence. And so the students will do sessions, I think, every couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And now I think it's every Wednesday in the curriculum. They tweaked it a little bit this year where they call it IPE, Interprofessional Education, on Wednesday afternoons. So modules with dental students, nursing students, or PA students. Why is that important from your perspective, being on healthcare teams?
Again, the team is the main functioning structure in medicine today. And on the team, it'll be varied. You may have a team who's rounding that has nutritionists, the surgeon, the internist, the pharmacist. You may have a multidisciplinary team. Or you may be taking care of a patient where just because you're the doctor doesn't mean you're the authority. The respiratory therapist may be the one that needs to come in and do the ventilator settings, not you. So a title does not necessarily signify a place on the hierarchical ladder. It's based on knowledge, not the title. So again, and we alluded to this a little bit earlier with IQ groups, sometimes we have to step back and let the person who's the expert step forward. Not to mention, we need to understand how one another function, what our roles on the team are, and where our shared information and knowledge bases are.
So one of the couple things I wanted to mention before we move on to like the application process, we said earlier that you said that most of the afternoons here are self-directed learning time or independent learning time. And so some of the people ask us, like, well, what are students doing? Well, they're studying.
Yes, absolutely. School first.
They get involved in what we have, these pathways, these Case Western pathways, which are kind of like
a minor almost.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. They're like a minor. So we have pathways in humanities, health innovation and entrepreneurship, wellness and preventative care, urban health, and a new one this year is world medicine. So it's like a seminar series, like once a week where they meet, and it's longitudinal over 4 years.
And you'll get a certificate at the end of it.
Yep. And we have a lot of students doing dual degrees. Those are really popular here. The MPH, bioethics and anatomy are the most popular ones, but we also have a handful of students doing other ones in like biomedical engineering and anthropology. We certainly have the MBA and the JD as well. But something a lot of students get involved in is a student clinic, the student-run clinic.
Yep.
And that's also
another IPE, interprofessional team.
So that I think they do that every other Saturday.
Yeah, it's an acute care clinic.
They use the facility down the street where used to be called the Free Clinic with Greater Cleveland. Now it's Circle Health.
Yeah,
Circle Health Services or something. So they use their facility. So that's something a lot of students get involved in. And then the medical Spanish elective students, many students get
levels
involved in.
Levels 1, 2, and 3.
Because they dovetail that ongoing, because people always ask us, like,
what are the international opportunities?
Yep.
Our Center for Global Health is one of the top global health centers in the country. Very, very highly regarded, really robust research, and lots of opportunities for our students to go abroad. But I think the most famous and well-known one is our Peru clinics. In the summer between first and second year, frequently is when our students will go. We have 3, I think, sites.
Yeah, and 3 sites in like some mountain villages. There.
Yeah, I mean, really rural and really amazing and challenging experiences from what I hear from those who've gone.
So they go from 2 to 4 weeks, I think, depending on what the schedule that out to go do those outreach there. So a lot of students that are planning on going on the Peru trip will do the medical Spanish elective to kind of build up their chops over that first year so that they're ready to be able to make an impact when they get to Peru. But also we have a large Hispanic population in the near west side of Cleveland that Metro Health typically serves. And so some of our students who are very fluent in Spanish will get involved in those clinics too.
Oh, yeah. We're also a very student-driven school. We have students involved with every governmental, if you will, using that term very loosely, organization here at the School of Medicine. We have students who sit on our admissions committee and who help us oversee the interview day, student hosting, our revisit weekend. We have students who sit on the Committee on Medical Education. They sit on the Dean's Advisory Council. Students are engaged with virtually every aspect of governance here.
Speaking of students, what would you say, before we wrap this up, what would you say are some attributes or characteristics or the vibe of the students here?
The vibe, I think, is amazing. And I'll just sort of use this in a global sense, not just in the student sense. Sure. From an institution which very much involves our student body, we hold ourselves to a very high level of academic performance. The clinical work that we do is unparalleled. The clinical research, the cutting edge breakthroughs we make are unparalleled. We hold ourselves to a very high standard. We work very hard, but we do that in a really cool and mellow, laid back and friendly environment. The malignant factor is low here. I know I'm pretty hard on myself, as you know, and I push myself hard, but I like to have fun, and we're pretty mellow. We're pretty chill. It's a very friendly, very collaborative and supportive environment. So just because you're working hard and you're accomplishing some major stuff doesn't mean you can't have fun while you're doing it.
I think that comes through on the interview day, which we'll get to.
I think so.
We try to set that tone when we know we have students and interviewees coming.
And we got to talk about Doc Opera because I think that really exemplifies.
So that's the last question. What is something that all students get involved in? And the answer is
Doc Opera. It's students, deans, everybody. The dean of our medical school is in it, Dr. Davis. So it's what would you call it?
You always call it a musical extravaganza.
A musical extravaganza where students take songs that they know the lyrics to. Sometimes we know the lyrics, sometimes we don't. And they change them around to parody the school or a disease or a faculty. There's singing, there's dancing, choreography first. There's singing, choreography, dancing. The band is incredible. They write their own musical arrangements. Primarily students in the band, but our own Christian Esmond is a drummer in the Doc Opera band. And then interspersed between the dance numbers are funny parody videos that the students will film, which are really good, have very high quality. So if you go into YouTube and look up Doc Opera, you'll find some of our clips. Do that.
Links on there. I mean,
it's a lot of fun.
It's a big philanthropy.
It's a huge philanthropic event. Generally, proceeds go to benefit Circle Health, previously the Free Clinic of Greater Cleveland. The students usually raise between $17,000 and $18,000 with one show.
Yeah. So they start rehearsing in September. They've already have a theme right now. This year it's The Wizard of Gauze.
Last year was Back to the Suture.
And so they'll start rehearsals in September, and then the show is at the beginning of December. So it's one night, and they reserve an auditorium here locally, and it's a big deal. It's a huge when I tell my friends about this, they're like, "What?" Like they hire people from the outside sound companies to come in and wire all the kids up and get the band all microphone.
Do the recording.
And stuff.
There's a DVD recording.
It is, and there's lights and there's set design.
Oh, yeah.
It is just. It's something else.
I bring people to the Doc Opera every year who are not in medicine and their minds are blown.
Yeah, these are medical students doing this.
Who are in medical school.
Yeah, going to school 24 hours a week or
and
whatever.
And to me, that exemplifies sort of the ethos of our school.
Yeah.
We work hard, but we still live our lives. We have a good time. We all band together. We all support each other and we all collaborate.
Yeah. It's really
an amazing
fun
show. It really is.
I'm glad to be a part of it when we do that.
Me too.
And they even get us to dance.
There's a faculty number.
Yeah.
It's like herding cats, but we try.
Yeah. I don't think my kids will come to it because they're embarrassed to see their dad up there.
Oh, see, my daughter is going to be a junior in high school. She kind of likes it still. That's because you're cringier than I am.
Yeah, I'm cringy. Yeah, my kids would say, "Dad, you're pretty cringy." Well, okay, so I think we've hopefully whet the appetite of
WHET.
Yeah, of our listeners, and I always like to switch gears here now and go, okay, so how do I get in? What's the application process like? What are you looking for what are we looking for in our applicants? So, well, I think the first thing to mention, we send our secondary application out to everybody with a verified AMCAS application.
Yes.
And then it's within that secondary that applicants can choose to apply to one program or more than one program. And so the university program, college program, or MSTP.
So in AMCAS, you indicate Case Western Reserve School of Medicine, and then it's our internal processes through which you'll indicate your programmatic interest.
So if you apply to more than one, then they're reviewed by separate programs. So it's kind of a 2-for-1, would you say? Like
Ish, but it makes, if you apply, make sure you really want to apply to all three. Don't just do it for freebies, because we have 3 separate screening processes, which could slow your application down. But if you truly have an interest in all 3, then go for it.
Yeah, but very few students do all 3.
Very few students do all 3. It's a lot of essays too.
Yeah. So when we're screening, what would you say we're looking for? Like we have a screening team. You and I are on the screening team. What kind of things do you look for? Or are we all looking for?
We're looking for a variety of different things. The one thing we are not looking for is pre-med bots. We do not want a class of students who all look the same, act the same, come from the same place. We look for a very diverse array of qualities. We do definitely we use holistic review when we're reviewing, and we do take all aspects of the application into consideration. We have a very broad range of metrics in our classes, which I think underscore what I just said. We're looking for cool, well-rounded, interesting people who are going into medicine for the right reasons and who are going to come here and thrive and be a good fit for us, which then takes us to what's fit.
Yeah.
What do we mean by fit?
Yeah.
Well, certainly I am firmly of the belief that the most effective physicians are the best communicators, both in the written and spoken word. The ability to transfer information to your patients is absolutely critical in this process. So we look for people who have grown their out of the classroom skills. Obviously, classroom performance is important. We have a rigorous curriculum. We know this. But we look for students who've gotten involved outside of the classroom. So again, they can grow their own personal toolkit. And whether somebody worked at Subway or worked at Chipotle 20 hours a week on top of going to school, you get some incredible skills from that. Not to mention helping you pay some of those bills, whether it's research or leadership positions or athletics, arts, music. We look for students who've gotten involved outside of the classroom and have learned to sort of navigate a lot of responsibilities at one time.
I think it's worth highlighting here so people to hear that we want to know your work history.
Work history
Do not leave that out.
Do not leave it out. It's very important. If somebody was working 20, 30, 40 hours a week, we know that the skills they got from that are huge. Getting up and going to class at 8 a.m. probably won't be a hardship. And then there was less opportunity to do some of the other things that maybe a student who didn't have to work was able to access. So work history is very important to us. We look for a variety of different things. There's no doubt. But as with all schools, our mantra is, a lot of people say apply early. I say complete early. What does complete mean? AMCAS applications in, secondary applications in, whatever fees have been paid, your MCAT scores uploaded, and all of your letters of recommendation have been uploaded. So for applicants, I say to you, please bird dog your own letters of recommendation. We have seen a few ships that were sunken. Everything was in place by late August, early September, and that last letter of recommendation trickled in January.
Yeah, that's bad.
So complete early. And obviously, some schools may have rolling admissions. We have rolling admissions. We put out admissions decisions periodically throughout the year. Some schools have non-rolling admissions decisions where they do one huge batch of acceptances at the end of their interview season in February or March or something like that. But all of us have rolling interview invitations. Meaning if we see your application in August where we still have 800 interview slots, you're far more likely to receive one than if we see your application in December where we may literally have 20 left. So complete early is a very important thing for people to keep in mind.
Is there something that jumps out to you when you're screening applications that you really like to see?
No, I don't think there's one thing. There's not one thing. I like essays where people just tell their stories. We can talk about the essay for a moment, which is paralyzing for many people, the AMCAS essay.
Like the personal statement?
The personal statement. It's just, what do we always say? It doesn't have to be the great American novel. It does not need to be a stunning piece of literature.
Bring us to tears. I don't think there's only one that has done that.
One brought us to tears and they didn't get in.
Right.
So
anywhere in the United States.
Anywhere. So the moral of our story is it's just another piece of your application. Please don't obsess over it. Do spend time with it. But what do we say? Strive for a solidly, slightly above average piece of work. No clever literary devices, just your story. One piece of advice I give to people early on in their undergraduate career or early on is keep a journal. As you're going through your shadowing experiences and seeing patients and all of their experiences, just come home and write down a couple sentences, whether you liked it or you hated it or what impact it had on you. And then when you review that, when you go to write your essay, your personal statement, it almost writes itself and you can remember things more, what brought you to this point.
The emotion.
Yeah. Absolutely. So please don't obsess about it. Spend time on it, of course.
It's important.
But again, it does not, we prefer that it is not the great American novel.
So you know that there's questions that pre-meds ask us all the time. It's like, well, what's the best essay, which is hard to answer, but like, what are things that sink a personal statement? Like you just like, oh, this is bad.
Oh yeah. There's some things that can sink your personal statement. Profanity. Yes. Never, ever. Don't do it.
Don't go
Even
there.
if you're quoting a patient and they dropped an F-bomb, don't write it.
We've seen that.
Don't do it. Yes.
Yeah, we've seen that.
No
I
profanity.
called the pre-med advisor.
Yes.
And they were gobsmacked.
But no profanity.
Yeah,
Nope. Really graphic details about body fluids or worms or discharges. I don't know why people put that in there. Maybe they want us to think that they're in the trenches with us. And I got to tell you that most of our screeners are looking at these after hours during dinner.
We read them during lunch.
We screen applications during lunch.
Like,
if it makes us nauseated, it's probably not good.
Yeah.
Profanity, intolerance.
Yes.
Any type of intolerance, judgy. We read an essay the other day. I read an essay the other day where somebody talked about how they were initially thought about being a veterinarian, then went on to bash veterinary, the practice of veterinary medicine. Bashed it. That was bad.
That's bad.
It's not
bad
good. Bad form. Don't use too many quotes. We'd rather hear your word than Vincent Van Gogh's.
Yeah.
Have we seen a Van Gogh quote? You know what I mean?
No, but like Ben Franklin's Socrates
quote.
or something.
Don't waste your precious character limits on other people's words unless they're really, really meaningful. You do not have to have had a seminal moment in your life where medicine hit you like a ton of bricks.
Or that you knew you wanted to be a doctor when you were 2.
When you were putting a Band-Aid on your teddy bear. Yeah, so...
Is grammar important?
Oh, grammar. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Details count.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a really, this sounds terrible, but there's a reality. All of us are getting more applications from well-qualified applicants than we could ever interview or admit. So sometimes we're actually looking for reasons to not interview people.
That's true.
A really sloppily written essay with bad grammar could be an issue. It could definitely be an issue. Details count. In medicine, details count. So details.
You are not ashamed to say that you are the grammar dean.
I'm the grammar dean. I enjoy grammar.
The grammar queen.
I am the grammar queen.
Yep.
And I have a coffee mug that says, I am silently judging your grammar. Don't panic when you come to interview with us, though. I'm actually really nice. So details do count.
Yeah.
And you don't need to use a ton of big words. Sometimes we'll see essays littered with 50-cent SAT words where...
Put the thesaurus app away.
Yeah, put it away and just write in your own language.
So I think we touched on a lot of like what we're looking for, I think particularly important to people they wanted to hear, like what things sink essays, and I think that not only for the personal statement, but other essays they may have to complete is don't
secondary
go overboard.
Essays, don't copy and paste.
Yep.
When I see an essay that last year said, and that is why I would like to be a student at the Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine, which is a perfectly wonderful school, but we're not the right school, so we're going to pass you on to somebody else.
Not
yes,
Northwestern.
Northwestern. So don't copy and paste.
Yeah, we'll send that on to them.
Yes.
I've asked a few people before we talk about the interview day, tell us how we feel about gap years. Because this is becoming more popular.
Gap years / glide years are becoming a thing. Bridge years. I'm a huge fan of the gap year. Huge fan if they're done for the right reason. I do think it's becoming it's increasingly difficult to apply at the end of your junior year, particularly depending on the school you go to, where biochemistry, a prereq for the MCAT, may not even happen until the spring of your junior year. And then you're hurrying to take the MCAT and get all your applications in and applying to medical school while you're still a senior and having to keep your grades up. And it can be a lot. There are certainly students who are ready and willing and able and want to come to med school directly. Go for it. But if a gap year is something that you're even considering, I would listen to it. I view that as, I say to students, if you're not taking the gap year for academic remediation purposes, view it as your gift. It's a year of your life that if all goes according to plan, you'll never have that much time again until retirement. So think about what you may want to do with that. Mm-hmm. I do recommend, though, keeping one little baby toe at least dipped in the pool of medicine, regardless of what it is that students think about doing.
Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you to share with people our thoughts on this is, how much medically related experience do I really need? Because for some students, it's hard to get. Sometimes,
it can be hard
depending
to
on
get.
Where you live or where you're going to school. And we highly recommend it or strongly recommend it. But how much do I need to show you that I know what I'm getting myself into?
That's a tough question to answer. Mm-hmm. If only I could say 71 hours and be done.
Everybody would hit 71
hours. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Done. Or that's what you need. Done. Alas, it's not the case. We know that medically related experiences can be increasingly difficult to access. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we do think it's important for the pre-medical student to get some exposure to medicine, to kind of understand as much as you can at this phase what you're getting yourself into. This is not a path for the faint of heart. This is not a career choice. It's really a lifestyle choice. So we think it's really important for the applicant to get some idea of what they're getting themselves into. So I do think it's important to spend some time with a physician. And I think it's important to get some patient perspective to start understanding what your patient population is going to look like, what the socioeconomic determinants of health are like, what impacts disease and the way it presents in certain people in certain different parts of our population. The first day of medical school should not be the first time that you've ever thought about this, because you may be in for a really unpleasant surprise. Not all patients fit the central casting from Grey's Anatomy, right? I mean, patients go through a lot. They may be angry and bitter and miserable and don't want to be there, and may not be the compliant one that you think about when you watch TV. And so we want to make sure that our applicants and future practitioners understand the challenges that may be there. Mm-hmm.
It's tough. I mean, for some students, it's tough to find.
It is tough to find.
I think you have to.
But this is a tough path that you're choosing.
Yep.
It's a tough path. It is not like any other career that you will find. So I do really think it's important to try and get some type of exposures, whether it's in a formalized job sense of the new cottage industry of scribing, which is really everything. It's the physician perspective, the patient's perspective. You're learning the jargon of medicine, volunteering in a free clinic. There's a variety of different ways to get there. It doesn't necessarily have to be just shadowing a physician on a daily basis.
Yeah, or patient care assistant.
Patient care assistant would be huge. A nurse CNA, a certified nursing assistant is tough.
That's tough.
Tough. So, there's many ways to get there. It doesn't have to necessarily be that defined shadowing, but it is important to familiarize yourself. But that's also where it's important for us to know your work history as well. If you get so many skills when you're in some of these work situations that are very translatable to medicine.
I think what people should hear in that is that you definitely need this stuff, because if you don't, we're going to sniff it out on the interview day. We're going to
sniff it out on the interview day. And then even worse, you may get to med school and after paying a year of tuition, think, oh no, this is not for me.
Yeah. I don't really like sick people.
Yeah. That's a problem. That's a problem.
So we've done our application. We've submitted it. It's been screened by the Dream Screen team.
The Dream Screen.
And we've been invited for an interview. You come to case and you come to the interview day. So let's kind of walk them through what the interview day is like. So they get here about 8:15. We get things started around 8:30 with a curricular welcome, and then
it started off with a delicious continental breakfast.
Oh yes, and coffee, and then we go give an overview of the curricular highlights and kind of walk them through what the day is going to be like. And then they have 2 interviews. Do you want to talk about the interview process?
Yeah. So we have a health education professional interview, the HEP interview. It's either going to be a faculty member or a researcher, or maybe a retired physician. It may be our registrar. It'll be a member potentially of our student affairs team, but somebody who's engaged with healthcare and or education. Yeah. That lasts 45 minutes to an hour. It's an open file interview in that the interviewer is able to access every part of your application except for the MCAT. That's blinded to everybody but the screeners and the admissions committee. So they're blinded to the MCAT score. We're piloting new questions this year, standardized questions. So that is a much more of a formalized interview, if you will. Then the second interview was with a current medical student who, again, does not have access to all components of the application.
Right.
They can see the essay, personal statement,
the experiences
work
section.
and experiences section. That lasts half an hour, maybe a little more informal.
And it usually sometimes lasts a little more.
30 to 45 minutes, but it counts.
Yeah.
The medical student interview has definitely weight in the admissions process. So hopefully
we won't go to committee. We will not take the applicant to admissions committee if we're missing the student component. Because I even had one of my current students the other day say, well, is our feedback as valuable as the faculty
Absolutely.
or the health education professional interview? I'm like, well, we won't go to admissions committee without it.
No, but all those data points are really important.
Yeah.
Both perspectives are really important.
So we have interviews occur throughout the day.
So the HEP interview can occur in the morning or in the afternoon. The medical student interviews almost invariably in the afternoon because they're in class in the mornings.
And we have information session about financial aid. We do a meet the dean session. You're here.
If I'm in town, I'll
every
meet
single
you.
interview day.
Yep.
Which I think is important. They know that they'll get to see you.
Ooh.
And that's pretty cool, though.
I love meeting applicants. I love meeting you guys.
Well, it helps us put a name with a face.
Yep. And we get to know each other a little bit.
Your voice and you're animated, and we really enjoy that.
And if you laugh at my jokes, it's extra appreciated.
Yeah, that's a big tip. Always laugh at the dean's jokes.
Those are words to live by.
Not obnoxiously.
Not obnoxiously.
Where you're slapping your leg and
I mean, don't go overboard.
fall out of your chair and hold to your side.
Yeah, we don't need that. I'm funny, but not that funny.
Yeah, we'll pick that up that you're being kind of obsequious.
But a polite laugh is fine.
And then we're gonna have a tour of the school, which we're working on now because we got to walk people through this place.
It's a huge building.
Walk it through.
Yeah.
And then the afternoon has the medical student interview, and usually wraps up about 3 or 3:30.
And don't forget the financial aid. We have a financial aid overview as well. Mm-hmm.
Yep, to talk about that, and we also part of that session too is having the interviewees understand that we have a special curriculum on financial literacy and debt management to help our students, once they get here, continue to educate them on those topics.
Very well received curriculum.
Yep.
Yeah, really good curriculum.
So,
and lunch with current students with a very informal question and answer session. So applicants do get to meet current students. And then in the mornings, if you have some downtime, you can go to inquiry group and observe. Yeah.
So we try to get the students in on the classes too, because it's a nice opportunity for students to come in and sit down and see our students in action and kind of get a feel for how the IQ teams work. And we have lecture too, and people can sit and lecture, but we really try to get
education.
them into the IQ team so they can kind of, and the medical students love seeing interviewees come in because they see themselves in them. Like, because just for the first years, they're kind of blown away that, oh my gosh, just
that
a
was
year
me
ago,
last year.
and I looked like that, I was in a dark suit and stiff shoes. And so they're very warm and welcoming because they get it. They're just doing this not too long ago.
Yep.
So we go through the interview day. Let's walk them through then what happens after the interview day.
So after the interview day, then hopefully the HEP interviewer and the medical student interviewer put in their feedback. Mm-hmm. Our admissions committee meets roughly every 2 weeks. The weekend prior to the admissions committee meetings, which generally happen on a Monday, each admissions committee member is assigned a set number of applicants to review and present at the admissions committee meeting. So at the meeting, each committee member presents their applicants, whatever relevant discussion needs to ensues, and then there's an anonymous vote, and admissions decisions are made based on those anonymous votes.
And so from there, we do a rolling admissions process where we put actions out about once a month. Yeah.
Every 4
we try to group 2 admissions committees together to try to make sure it's fair to everybody who came, because there might be a week where, like, if we came to the interview this week and it happens to be just
a mind-blowing cohort. And then if we were to have admissions committee right after that, we might not make the cut. Right. And we accept a percentage from each admissions committee meeting, so that even if you interview on the very last day of our interview season, you have an equal likelihood of being accepted as if you had interviewed on the very first day. So
we're very judicious in how we
But that's important to remember, because some schools will later in the season have those be waitlist offers.
Right.
Whereas our interview process results in true admissions actions.
What if you find out you're on the wait list here? Do we take people off the wait list?
We take people off the wait list. It's difficult to predict how many people we'll take off the wait list, but It's not a horrible place to be. I mean, ideally, an acceptance is better, but it's not a horrible place to be. Stay in touch with us. Let us know if you're interested in coming. That's always good information for us to know.
Because I ask every school, what if I'm on the wait list? Do you want to hear from me or not?
Yeah, some schools don't want to know. They don't want. They have a very stringently ranked wait list, and they go from there. We're very careful to craft our class throughout the year and to try and keep that sort of demographic breakdown throughout the remainder of the year. So we don't necessarily rank our wait list per se, but it's very good for us to know who's interested. So send us updates. Let us know. We don't need to hear from you every single day, but every now and then it's just good to know who's still interested.
Letters of intent.
Letters of intent are welcome. Again, it's very good for us to know who's likely to come if we make an offer. Yeah. But if you're going to send it, mean it.
Yeah, definitely. Don't put the Northwestern, and this is why I would love to come. I meant Case Western.
Yes, what I meant was.
We've seen that too.
We've seen that too.
Oh my gosh.
We get there's a lot of moving pieces. It's a stressful process. We totally understand that.
Happens.
But, try and be a little vigilant.
Details kind of count when you're writing a letter of intent to another school.
Details count in medicine. Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna wrap up here in a few minutes and talk about interview day tips.
Yes.
But before we do, talk about Cleveland. We're here in Cleveland, Ohio, and I don't think this place is visited by everyone.
Which is a crying shame.
Yeah, but I think we don't want everybody to come here because we want to keep the riffraff out.
We want to keep it as a well-kept secret.
What do you like about Cleveland?
I like that we have everything you would find in a larger city, but it's less expensive.
Yeah.
We really have everything. Yeah. Mind you, some cities may have 17 Ethiopian restaurants. We have 3. But there's something, whatever you want to find, you can find it here. The thing I really like about Cleveland is people are really nice here.
Yeah.
It's a friendly Midwest. Like, I went to New York and I said hi to people and they thought I was creepy. Here we say hi to people all the time. My sister lives in DC and she came home and was at the grocery store with me a couple months ago. And I said, I was talking to somebody in the line and we walked away and she goes, "Who is that?" I said, "I don't know." She goes, "Then why were you talking to them?" So we're just kind of friendly and laid back here. It's an easy place to live. The cost of living's great. Tons of stuff to do. Our food scene is really good. Yeah. Which is a beautiful thing. My husband moved here from Montreal in 1991. The food scene was not good back then, but it's very good now. Yay. Yeah. Good shopping, good shows. We have a great music scene.
Yep. I agree with that.
Christian's very much into music, so he can definitely give the thumbs up on that. But certainly from a biomedical perspective, all of that notwithstanding, the resources here are unbelievable. Truly. Not just the 4 hospital systems. The state of Ohio has recognized that the biomedical industry is really going to be something that can help stimulate our economy. So tons of resources being dedicated to it. We have a lot of startups around here. There's just so much going on. Yeah. So if you're in medicine, you say, I moved to Cleveland, no one's really going to ask why. They get what's going on here.
Totally. Yeah. I like that. When I hear from students, they're pleasantly surprised because we get students from all over the country.
We do.
And some of them are from larger metropolitan areas, and I think they have maybe some bias coming in that they're not going to like it or something. Yeah. But when they get here, they're like,
"Oh my gosh!"
I've been meeting with students the last week here or so. And they're like, how are you getting settled in and stuff? Like, I love this place. It has a lot of fun things to do. I'm pleasantly surprised, and I think that's people.
We're a little underrated in the word on the street scene, but when you get here, I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much going on here. So I wanted to just give a plug to Cleveland while you and I are on here. Yeah,
we deserve a plug. That whole river catching fire in the 70s.
That was 50 years ago.
That was a long time ago.
That was 50. And you know what? I saw an article about that, and that was actually one of the best things that could happen because
we cleaned it up.
It created the EPA.
The burning river created the EPA?
Because of that. And then it started to change all the policies and regulations that for industries across the country and stopping.
You're welcome, America.
Dumping chemicals and all kinds of stuff into rivers and streams and things like that. So it changed the way regulations work because of that. So
all right. Onwards and upwards.
Let's not forget that was 50 years ago.
50.
So
yes.
Leave it at that.
Okay.
It's different today.
Ancient history.
It's very different today.
You can swim in the lake. It's actually quite nice. Yep. Yes.
Okay, so interview season is around the corner at the time that we're recording this. Let's talk about Dr. Mehta's, your tips.
My do's and don'ts.
Yeah, your do's and don'ts for interview days. What do you like? What do you don't like to see?
I like when students have done their research and homework about the school. I'm always taken aback when somebody shows up and they say, "What now? IQ group? What? You have a research thesis?" Because to me, it just says you're throwing pennies in the air and hoping one falls heads up somewhere. If you were to interview for a job with a Fortune 500 company, you would never show up cold, or you shouldn't. Those are words to you.
Yeah.
You should never show up cold. Do your homework. My philosophy is if you get chosen for an interview, you're interviewing us as much as we're interviewing you. There's a high likelihood that the applicant who interviews with us is going to have other options. So know what questions you have to ask. Know where you want clarification, but do your homework before you come for the interview.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for me. Stay off your phone.
Yep.
Even if you're taking notes diligently in your notes app in your phone, it's going to look to us like you're checking your Snapchat or, texting people. Don't be afraid to go old school and have a notepad and a pen where you take notes, where you write down some of the questions you have for us. But truly being on your electronics sends a really mixed message about how engaged you are.
There's a lot of eyes on you on the interview day.
Your interview begins with the day you submit your application, or even before, the first time you initiate contact with our office. And it doesn't end until you actually matriculate, truly. And even if you've already matriculated, we can still find a way to make your life miserable. But all eyes are on you all day long. So be engaged, be interested, be excited. Be excited about your interview. It's hard to get an interview to medical school. And the fact that you got one is a feather in your cap. So make the most of it. Absolutely make the most of it. I don't like rude people. Be nice to everybody whom you meet. You don't know who they are. And if you do know who they are, it's words to live by. Be nice to everybody.
Let's see. What else? What kind of things, what impresses you in an applicant that you may be interviewing?
I'm impressed when an applicant is themselves.
Yeah.
You can tell when somebody's being disingenuous and trying to fit a preconceived mold that they've set for themselves in terms of who they think you want them to be. I'm impressed when somebody's themselves. I mean, check your words, obviously. Don't let it all hang out. But I'm impressed when somebody understands who they are and they're proud of who they are and their responses reflect that. Yeah.
I think the responses that show some depth.
Absolutely. A broad worldview. Yeah. Somebody who's thought about things, who hasn't just looked at the world around them from a very superficial level, but who's actually taken the time to be an observer. I think I see interview feedback with, say, people, they felt like they were just feeding me what I wanted to hear. Yep.
And that's tough.
It's tough. I mean, you certainly want to read your interviewer. Part of human interactions is looking at your recipient and understanding if you're giving them what they need, but not morphing your answer in a disingenuous way. Yeah.
I would think a tip would be read everything that you're sent about the interview day. Yes. I mean, we spend a lot of time crafting those communications. Not just our office, but other offices too spend a lot of time crafting messaging and directions on how to find the place, because we get what to expect. Yeah, what we know how to order your lunch. Yeah, this is the first time you're coming to see us for the most part, unless you go to school at undergrad at that particular university or here at Case, that you might know your way around. But invariably, every year, we have a student who winds up at the main central campus. They go to the main address that's on like every Case website. It's like 10900 Euclid Avenue. If you wind up there, it's a guard shack at a parking parking lot. Hello? That's like the main mailing address for the whole university.
But meanwhile, we sent you 5 communications that have the true address in it.
About where we are with a little drawing and how to, maps and pictures and stuff. And it still blows me away when people they can't find that. Yeah. And that's
problem solving is important.
That's a red orangish flag.
It is. The other thing too is if you are unable to make your interview, or you decide you don't want to interview at that school, please let them know as far in advance as you possibly can. One of the major peeves for virtually every medical school in the U.S. is no-shows on the interview day. We put a lot of resources into the interview day. We have interviewers who are waiting to meet you. We've ordered your lunch. We've got all sorts of resources we had to mobilize, and you just don't show up.
Oh, and 2 people have spent at least some significant amount of time reviewing your application.
And that's a slot we could have given to somebody else. Yep. I mean, deans of admissions go wild.
We're on a listserv,
no-shows.
and that comes up. Like, what do you do with people that, applicants that no-show? What should we do?
Oh, yeah. I'm on all these national committees where deans of admissions are, have pitchforks and flaming torches to try and get a central database for applicants who no-show on interview days because they view it as that lacking in professionalism, which isn't going to happen yet.
Well, I think what's important to remember is so if somebody doesn't show up here on our interview day and they didn't notify us, we get worried.
We do. Did something happen to you?
Yeah, like where are they stuck somewhere? Are they lost? What did something happen? Because we feel kind of responsible.
We do.
As our guest, and then we try to call them, and it goes to voicemail. We try calling multiple times, and then we reach them like, hello, and they overslept.
Oh, I thought I canceled that interview. I meant to.
Yeah, I sent you an email, and we don't have any record. Because before we make those calls, we pour through everything.
Yep.
Did we miss something? Did we miss something? We miss a voicemail. Did we miss an email? Most of the time, we don't.
It's
don't
very
have any
unprofessional.
Evidence.
Yeah. That's a bad prognostic indicator for future behavior.
Yeah. So
please, if you decide you're not going to interview, let the school know as soon as you possibly can.
Right. I mean, what about what if you don't feel like the interview went well that day? What would you recommend? Like if the student leaves and it's like, I just didn't have my best game, or I didn't
click with my interviewer.
Something didn't go well, not just at our school, but like maybe any school. What do you think they should do?
I would advocate reaching out to the dean of admissions. I would like to know, dean or director, somebody on the admissions team. I would encourage applicants to reach out to somebody on the admissions team and say, could I talk to you? Or I just didn't feel this went well. Do you have any advice for me? And there's a reality. We have a large interview team. There may be an interviewer and an applicant who just don't click. We train everybody. We try and really even the playing field as much as we possibly can, but we know that things can happen.
Yeah.
So I absolutely would want to know that if an applicant has that experience.
That's a big ask though. I think applicants might be kind of scared to
They are.
reach
It's scary.
out.
I get
so
that.
What if they have a pre-health advisor?
They have a pre-health advisor. They can touch base. They could talk to that person. Maybe have the pre-health advisor reach out to us.
It doesn't happen often that we get an applicant or
it's
an advisor.
It's very infrequent.
But I think it's worth mentioning that if somebody has an interview, because these are high stakes days.
But you really need to stop and think about it first.
Yeah.
Think about it truly. Was it me? Was it them? What do I think really happened? And then get in touch.
I think another tip would be, if you're not feeling well, don't come here.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's tough if you bought a flight, you bought your plane ticket, you've got your hotel room booked, but anecdotally, we've had somebody who showed up with a migraine and they basically wound up laying in our back office the whole day.
She got accepted. She did. She rallied when she needed to. We had that one guy. He was in the ER the night before with pneumonia.
Yeah,
and then he came the next day. He was gray.
He was gray, and he was ready to infect all of us.
Yeah, we're like, let's
reschedule you.
Let's help you out here. Because you're not going to be
at your peak.
It's a long day, and you're going to be under some stress that day for the interview, just naturally stressful.
Yeah, or just excitement.
And you're not feeling well.
And you're infectious. It's bad form to infect the admissions team.
That doesn't go well. No,
doesn't go
well. But
we understand things happen. If you come down with something before the interview, just let us know.
Yeah.
We understand that these things happen.
We can reschedule you for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah. How about any final thoughts about interview day tips?
I would really encourage you applicants to try and enjoy the interview day. And again, think about you're interviewing this school too. Is it a good fit for both of you?
Yeah.
So I would really encourage the applicants to try and enjoy the day as much as possible. Go in well prepared. Do your homework. Understand what the interview format is. If you're going to a school that has MMI and you don't know what MMI is and you didn't know they were going to have MMI, you're going to be off your game the whole day. So make sure you know how to prepare for the interview day before you show up.
Yeah. Okay. Wrapping things up. Final thoughts. What recommendations, do you have a favorite book or books or films or podcasts or something that you recommend to people that just medically related or not medically related?
I do, but mine are a little less orthodox than you might get from other deans of admissions.
Juicy. What do you have?
No, they're not. I recommend you read The Thesaurus from front to... No. There's certainly lots of great books out there, fiction and nonfiction, that refer to medicine, but I also am a huge proponent of self-care and of self-reflection. So if people haven't heard of imposter syndrome, I would highly recommend that you look it up and read about what imposter syndrome is, and maybe take some of the free tests that are online and see what your imposter syndrome score is. Is it low? Is it high? And then take it again 6 months after you're in medical school. Imposter syndrome is really the feeling that you don't belong where you are, and you got there maybe based on luck or based on a lucky break, and you don't deserve to truly be there. And that is something that really impacts a lot of first-year medical students, second-year medical students, first-year interns, new attendings. It's something that naturally flares when you find yourself in a new environment where you're not comfortable. But it's important to recognize it, because imposter syndrome can sometimes drive very dysfunctional behaviors. It can lead to anxiety. It can lead to all sorts of issues. And it's particularly prevalent in people who come from minority populations, women, people of color, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So I think it's really important to understand that it exists and to understand how it may manifest. So I'm a huge proponent of understanding that. Yeah. The other thing that I think is really important is to learn how to give your brain a little bit of a break. Whatever that looks like. I'm a huge fan of some mindfulness, guided meditations. As I reach a certain age and my brain doesn't fire as quickly as it used to, I sometimes find myself saying, I miss my old brain. But I know that if I do 10 minutes of a guided meditation every day for a week, my old brain comes back. In fact, there's data to show that hippocampal atrophy can be averted and even restored by meditation. So particularly for medical students or people applying to medical school, anybody whose brains are spinning constantly, it's imperative to give your brain that 10 minutes a day to just to repair itself. It's like after you had a huge heavy workout, you got to let the lactic acid get carried away and come back to a baseline. So there are a lot of free apps. There are apps you can pay for. The one I particularly like is called Insight Timer. It's a free app in the Apple Store, and the guided meditations are phenomenal. There's one called Calm that's not expensive that I know a lot of people subscribe to, but I really do firmly believe that it's imperative that you give your brain 10 minutes a day to heal itself and to be quiet.
Do you find that 10 minutes every day?
I wish I should. I don't. Yeah. I'm finding it more often than I'm not. Let's put it that way. And there's a lot of data that shows that the breathing, a quiet breath, leads to a quieter mind. The mind-body connection, again, is so intertwined that we have to keep both going. So mine are probably less orthodox, my recommendations, than most deans of admissions.
No, but it's good stuff.
I mean, at the end of the day...
It applies to everybody.
It applies to everybody. And at the end of the day, we're people who are doctors. And if we don't take care of ourselves as people, how can we possibly function as doctors? So I'm very adamant that we try and take care of ourselves as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Thanks.
We did it.
We did it.
Yeah. So there you go. That's everything about case.
Not everything.
Not everything. Just the highlights. We want to leave some
stuff for when you show up on interview day.
That's right. We keep the special sauce for the interview days.
It's the aerial view.
Yeah. So this has been fun. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thanks, Christian.
Yeah. All right.
And thanks to everyone for listening.
Yeah. You guys are making this so much fun for us. So thanks for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right.
Good luck, everyone.
All right. See ya. All right. Boy, I had a good time putting this one together because, it's with my friend Dr. Mehta and it's about my school. I'm glad to finally be able to bring you a little showcase about Case Western. Hey, if you enjoyed it, please tell your friends. Also, it's helpful if you go on and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and leave a comment and review and rate it. That helps, with the whole iTunes algorithm. I really appreciate it. It helps it get out there to more people. So I have a number of other schools lined up coming your way. So until next time, thanks everybody.